And welcome into the Thursday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you. Hope everybody's off to a wonderful start to their morning this morning. Joe Rexrode, how are you? What's going on?
Oh, I'm fine, but I'm more interested in how you're doing, Robert.
Good God. We've been doing this show for, I don't know, close to 5 years now. I've never not had an alarm go off until this morning. I woke up and I was like, the sun looks like it's coming up. That's kind of weird. That doesn't happen when I'm awake. Oh my God, it's 5:50. The show starts in 10 minutes. So I guess I'm doing it from home. That was interesting.
So was it because when I've had alarm issues, sometimes I've had PM instead of AM. Was it that or?
No, I have hit something on my phone. Like I'm not getting text message alerts, like notifications, or anything. So I've hit some, or probably more accurately, Allison has hit something on my phone where I'm just not being notified by anything. So I have to figure that out.
Okay. Well, I'm glad this happened because how many times has this happened to me? At least twice, maybe only twice.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think twice. I remember the one time. That was when Porth was filling in as producer, and you guys and I woke up. I had all these hilarious memes on my phone. You guys were making fun of me. I mean, yeah. I woke up an hour into the show or something.
Right. There came a point where we were concerned that you might be dead. So we were glad that wasn't the case.
Yeah. And then it was well, if he is dead, let's have some fun with it, Yeah. I mean, you might as well make the best of it. So I'm glad this happened to you, mean, now I'm not the only one that it's happened to, and you still made the show, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Ian Safar, how we doing? What's going on?
Oh, I'm doing great, thanks.
Yeah, I'm stressing Ian out on his first week on our show. He's like, wow, this idiot can't even wake up and come to work. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Still better than still Ian, I need a green tea. That was a terrible Stilly impersonation.
Well, it's all right. You do plenty of them, so not all of them are going to hit.
That's true.
So we got a lot to get to on the show today. We'll have the best and worst things in sports coming up later this hour at 6:45. Alex Doherty from the Tennessean will be with us at 7 o'clock. We're going to get into a heavy Preds discussion in the 7 o'clock hour as to what now happens with the season being over last night and what does the future look like for Andrew Burnett. We'll have that coming your way in the 7 o'clock hour. And, of course, Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports for his weekly visit at 8 o'clock, getting into the Titans and all things NFL draft. NFL being 1 week out from the beginning of the NFL draft. So we got a lot to get to on the program today. We begin with Nico Iamaleava and the spring transfer portal. So, Joe, I guess Colin Cowherd put it out there yesterday first that Nico to UCLA was done. There was some follow-up reporting. I think David Ubben and some others had it that UCLA is the likely destination. Pete Nakos from 0-3 put it out late last night, Joe, that the deal is not yet done and they're working through those things, but it does look like UCLA is going to ultimately end up being the destination here for Nico Iamaleava. So I guess we'll wait and see when that becomes actually official, but it looks like it's going to be UCLA. Your thoughts on Nico Iamaleava and UCLA before we get to one of the craziest things that was said yesterday by apparently Nico's camp.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. It was one of the four we mentioned. I was with you yesterday. I was starting to get excited about the idea of Syracuse and Nico and Tennessee reuniting right away. That would have been too amazing, but it makes sense. Obviously, it's going back home, a school that recruited him before, a school that at one point had a commitment from his little brother, who now is at Arkansas. I mean, maybe UCLA can get Madden to come in to be his backup, but UCLA also paid, I think a decent sum, it's believed, for and I don't want to make sure I have this correctly. I think he was the App State quarterback last year.
Yes.
I'll check on that. But, that's the problem. I mean, any of these teams, they have some kind of an investment at quarterback and a plan at quarterback, having just gone through spring ball. And so now it's nope, Nico's in here. So how much of a pay reduction? Certainly, I think some, right? I mean, I think and there's been some reporting to that effect in terms of, UCLA basically not willing to go too high. I mean, again, they've already paid a quarterback. So how much are you going to invest in your QB room? You know, especially when you're not a good team. I mean, they've brought in a lot of players in the portal. They got Indiana's co-OC to be their OC. I mean, we'll see what it looks like next year. I mean, it's a decent landing spot for him, all things considered, but it's still a bad team. And boy, if you want to talk about finances, you cut your pay to some extent, whatever it is. I've seen some numbers thrown out there, but I don't, I'm not by anyone that I would necessarily, tie my life to it. But I think it's fair to say a cut in pay and certainly an increase in cost of living. Also, obviously going from here to California. So pretty rough all around situation as we've been talking about all week, but I guess it's better than like sitting here right now having no home.
Yeah, it's better than that. Now, of course, as this continued to kind of trickle out there yesterday, the damage control from the Iamaliava camp started to really be thrown out there. And now apparently this was never, according to them, Joe, this is never about money at all. It was always about the Tennessee offense and, getting out of there because they don't like the Tennessee offense. Now, of course, the Tennessee offense hasn't changed since they decided to commit to Tennessee and Josh Heupel. And he was there through his freshman year with Josh Heupel and then was the starting quarterback. The Tennessee offense that they were apparently still interested in being there in December through the spring was the same. But now that the spring window has come and he's left, it's about the Tennessee offense, according to the family. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's a pretty pathetic attempt at after the fact spin. I mean, I say if you're going to go this way and try to claim that it's not about money, even though everybody knows it's all about money, and there's reporting on all sides of it that it's about money. Say like they didn't get him a good enough offensive line. I mean, I could buy that. Like that's the receivers or whatever. I mean, those are like legitimate complaints that you can have. Again, we've talked about the offense in the NFL and all that stuff. And like, does this help you? Does this benefit you getting ready for the NFL? Maybe not as much as some other offenses, but again, then that's a decision you make, way before this, right? I mean, yeah. So it's a pretty poor attempt at spin and no one's buying. I mean, I guess there's always somebody who can buy something, a lot of BS gets put in the world that's just totally false and people buy it. But I mean, anybody who follows this story who actually believes that this family was that they were about anything but just that this was about anything but money, I mean, you're just totally fooling yourself.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go down that route, I'd say, man, we got through spring ball, and I just realized this team's going to be terrible. Like, I don't like the wide receivers or the
Right.
or the offensive line. Like, come up with something better than that. Like, that's probably where I would have gone. I was like, yeah, we got through spring ball, and I just thought this is going to be about a 7-5 football team, so I had to get out of there.
Yeah, like if you want Tennessee fans to believe you, say, I just really want them to fire the offensive line coach, and they didn't. So
yeah,
I left.
Yeah, that would probably do it. That may be the one thing that he could have done to be like, oh, okay, yeah.
We stand with you, Nico.
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like UCLA is going to be the destination for Nico Iamaliava. And now his camp is blaming the Tennessee offense, not the money, as for the reason of him leaving, causing the stir that he did, and entering the transfer portal. We'll take your thoughts on all that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Best and worst things in sports coming up later this hour. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Talking to Paul Feinbaum on the Chase and Big Joe show. Paul, it's so great to hear from you. When did you first get wind this was going on? Because now there was rumors back in December that he was not happy with his deal, might have held out the playoff game. But this latest thing, when did you finally hear, like, oh, what's going on here now?
I mean, everyone heard something in the wintertime, but how much attention do you pay? Because, I mean, in my mind, every one of these players has their hand out, and why not? If you can get money, get it. Just like in your business and my business and everybody else's. As far as recently, Thursday the rumors started flying around, and I don't know. I just assumed, wrongfully, I might add, that Tennessee would give him what he wanted. That's how we're conditioned right now. And exactly how the decision went down in Knoxville, I'm not clear. I have an idea. And I think Josh Heupel was at the center of it. And I think he probably said, listen, we can live without him. I think it's as simple as that.
That's Paul Feinbaum yesterday on with Chase and Big Joe discussing Nico Iamaleava. Again, it looks like UCLA is going to be the destination for Nico. And we'll see, Joe, if we ever actually determine what the deal ends up being if and when it becomes official here. I got one texter on the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. It says Nico's camp should have just said he wanted to come home and play in his home state. It's still a lie, but it's a better one. In talking about the messaging from the Iamaleava camp yesterday.
That would have been a better lie. I agree.
It would have been a better lie. I still like, let's just operate under the assumption that this is the destination and that the money is not going to come close to the $4 million number that he was looking for, which has been what's reported that it's not. So let's think about this for a second, Joe. You've got a UCLA team that I think we would all agree has some history there with a program, but right now is not in a very good spot. They were not good last year. So you got him coming into that. It's a worse situation than Tennessee was where you were. You're making, let's say he even makes the same amount of money he made at Tennessee last year. Well, now you factor in the tax part of it, and it's just a significantly less amount of money than you were making at Tennessee. So you're kind of sifting through this right now, Joe, and where it looks like it's going here, it continues to just be a mind-boggling decision. And I'm really interested to see if we ever learn what the actual dollar value is here.
Yeah, that's going to be that's the thing. I've heard some this week, like, well, we'll be interesting when we find out, that number. You remember, I mean, when Nico signed, we talked about it on our show at the time because that story was broken by Stuart Mandel at The Athletic, and he had the contract. But remember, we didn't have confirmation publicly that it was Nico. You know what I mean? It took a while. Really, that wasn't really like official until the whole NCAA thing.
Right.
And then it was like, and then like anybody we had put, we knew. And so everybody knew, but you couldn't really publicly put it together until then. So I'm sure they are going to be fiercely protective of that number, right? The family is. It's just a matter of, I mean, it really comes down to if somebody at the school or an agent wants to tell a reporter. But I mean, most of these, I mean, how many players do we know? How many players in college football do we know exactly what they're making? I mean, I know that among, like at work with other people I work with that cover college football, we have an idea or we have numbers on some people, but even a lot of those aren't like you can report those, So I don't know. My guess is it's just going to be presumed that it's just a cut of some kind, which again is just a huge misplay, just a huge botching of the whole thing to get less money and be in a worse situation. And then also go to a place where your money doesn't go nearly as far. Speaking of Mandel, he did this thing. He tweeted this out. It was like, city you are moving from, Knoxville, Tennessee. City you are moving to, Los Angeles / Long Beach, California. Your current income, $2.2 million. Refresh listing. It says, to maintain your current standard of living, you need to earn $3,801,620. The cost of living is 72.8% higher in Los Angeles / Long Beach. So there you go. It's just gracious. A complete, it just, look, if it works out at UCLA and some of their roster turnover is good, and he plays well and gets himself back on track to being an NFL prospect, then, then fine. It could still work out for him. But to me, now you've set yourself back and cost yourself money at the same time.
Yeah, like I saw a tweet yesterday, and I'm trying for the life of me to remember who it was. I thought it was Wes Rucker, our buddy, but I'm going through Wes's Twitter, which is, by the way, a doozy. He tweets so much.
My God.
So I'm
Stop
trying
tweeting, Wes.
Maybe it is Wes.
I don't
just
care what you had for
find it
lunch,
anymore.
Wes.
But regardless of who it was, like the point of the tweet was basically like, at this point, if I was Nico, I'd probably go to like some group of 5 team where you could throw for about 1 billion yards. And that way, at least you could sell it of, you got out of that Tennessee offense and you played an offense maybe that is more conducive to NFL football, and you could go out there and just light it up. And maybe you do that for a year or two, and an NFL team eventually is just like, you know what? The kid got out there and got a lot better and just grew, and you can still show your athleticism every now and then and his slipperiness and all that. I mean, the UCLA fit, again, it's a different year, free agency basically every year in college football now. Maybe UCLA is going to be really good next year. I have no idea. It just seems like a pretty poor landing spot for him in terms of, like, if you're trying to maximize the talent around you and compete for championships and all that, does not sound like a great spot to do all that at UCLA.
Yeah. It was Sparkles who actually had that. Adam
Sparks. There we go.
Said
okay. My apologies to Wes Rucker.
He said, he said, I'd tell Nico to get to a good group of 5 school, pass for 1 million yards, show his mobility. Right or wrong, that could make enough NFL teams wonder if Tennessee offense was the problem. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I get what he's saying. Yeah. Go somewhere where you can just light up. But I still think that the higher level of competition, the better. Like, you also, that looks also like you're running away from the best competition a little bit too, doesn't it? I mean, I don't think that's not what this is. This is a money grab gone wrong. But I think that at least at UCLA, I mean, he's playing in the Big Ten, which again continues to be weird, but that's what it is. He's in the Big Ten. So he will, in the next, I know yesterday on Stelly and Company, another win for me, which I know hurts Caroline to give me wins, but that we talked about UCLA's schedule, and there wasn't a ton on there that was all that attractive, but I think they play. I mean, you're going to play some good defense. I think they play Penn State this year.
I think they play Ohio State.
They do play Ohio State. Yeah,
I think so.
So it's one of those things. Like, I mean, if I'm Nico, I don't relish the idea of bringing that crew against Ohio State. Again, he already got smoked by Ohio State with a much more talented team.
They get to go back to the horseshoe, baby, at Ohio State.
Right.
November.
Oh, goody. Well, enjoy that, Nico. I'm sure the Bruins will be raring to go. But I mean, I do feel like the higher level of competition is good. It's just a question of, it's a question of like what kind of team is going to be around him. Is it going to help him or hurt him? Again, if you have no protection, if you don't have good playmakers, you're just going to look worse. Yeah, the offense is a little more quote unquote pro style, but the personnel is my big question. And last year it was terrible. Deshaun Foster, he was a first year coach, young coach. So we'll see. I mean, it wasn't a great debut, but he also took over a bad situation.
So, Joe, the distinguished gentleman on the YouTube chat says it obviously wasn't about money. It's about him not getting concussions. And if he was going to stay, it might as well get paid for those concussions. Those are where players also threaten to sit out. People are making it about the money. Pro style versus gimmick offense. It's that simple. This is from the distinguished gentleman on YouTube. Joe, your thoughts?
Okay, I need to read this for myself because, like, this is almost like that caller yesterday who said, like, all this stuff, and I'm like, why is this guy still talking? Please hang up. Hang up. What the hell was that, by the way? We haven't really talked about that. That could almost be worth a rant. Okay,
that was a good one.
This is the distinguished gentleman. It obviously wasn't about money. It was about him not getting concussions. What? Distinguished gentleman has all kinds of breaking news for us here on Robby and Rexrode. Thank you so much. What are you talking about, man? It's just he keeps posting things. But they all well, you don't have to put emojis with like every word. Thanks for having the little head with the little wrap on it for concussions. You know, it really adds a lot to your posts. Gentleman? I don't know. Yeah, distinguished gentleman. Have you been Nick Iamaleava all along?
Well, good question.
Yeah.
By the way, Joe, go ahead.
No, sorry. Yeah, like the whole pro style versus gimmick offense again. Yeah, we've talked about it many times. The Tennessee offense doesn't totally translate, but college offenses and the NFL offenses are not nearly as far apart as they used to be. So it's that's a classic. Just we need to throw some spin out there to make it, to try to damage control this thing, because right now all of college football is like, oh, so they're just out there just trying to money grab and with no regard at all for team, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's terrible spin.
So we're going to get to a former prominent college football coach's view on what is now the problem for the Vols in all this coming up here in just a few minutes. Joe, I do think we'd be remiss if we did not update our listening audience on your pursuit for the real ID. Did you get this done yesterday? Were you successful in your pursuit to land your new real ID?
I did. I got it done. Of course, yesterday it went like twice as slow as the day before. So I went and I hung around there for hours. And then every once in a while I'd like go to a gas station and get like a little pretzel snack with some hummus or whatever, a little protein bar. But yes, I got it. I got the temporary. So 3-day odyssey is over and we're all good.
Wow, that's good stuff. Against all odds, Rexrode got it done yesterday.
I will say, though, like I have this flight, in May, and the guy told me that this temporary thing will not work for you. So hopefully you'll actually get it in the mail by then. It'll be close. It'll be very close. So we'll keep you updated as that comes and catastrophe inevitably happens.
So you're telling me there's a chance.
Yeah.
Can't wait. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. More coming up next on the Nico Vols situation. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. We are taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Broadcasting from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Nico Iamaleava looks like he's going to end up with the UCLA Bruins here. In the meantime, Tennessee still, I think, looking in the portal and trying to identify either their next starting quarterback or at least a quarterback that could come in and compete with Jake Merklinger and George McIntyre. Joe, we brought it up, a former high-profile college football coach with some comments on the Tennessee front yesterday. This is what Urban Meyer had to say yesterday on the Tennessee front on the Triple Option podcast. Quote, here's the reality. Tennessee is screwed. They've got a problem. You lose a potential high draft pick. You have the backup quarterback left last year, and now you have a redshirt freshman who threw 9 passes and a freshman. Everybody's saying, nice job, Tennessee, making a stand. I've got a little comment on that. Tennessee plays Florida usually every year in October. Can you imagine that game's going the other way and Coach Heupel grabs the microphone and stands on the 50-yard line in Neyland Stadium and says, hey, it's okay. I made a stand way back when. That was the quote from Urban Meyer yesterday on the podcast, talking about how Tennessee is screwed in this situation. Now, a couple things. Tennessee plays at Florida this year, so I don't think he's going to be grabbing a microphone in Neyland Stadium. And the game is also in late November, so just a couple minor things there on the Urban Meyer front. But, Joe, your thoughts on what Urban Meyer had to say?
Let's see. It was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, in 2015, I covered an Urban Meyer team that might be the most talented team in college football history. I mean, like it's in there. Go look at the Ohio State 2015 roster. It's insane. And I watched and I covered a game with them losing their chance at a national championship, Big Ten championship, all that, to a Michigan State team that had its backup quarterback. I don't remember Urban Meyer taking the microphone explaining to the 105,000 absolutely miserable Buckeyes fans what happened that day. That's weird. I don't remember him picking up a microphone and explaining to Jacksonville Jaguars fans why he was one of the biggest bleep shows in NFL coaching history. So I like the microphone thing is really interesting to me. It's like I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Also, Urban, we're running a sale at The Athletic on subscriptions. So I just want you to know you can get in now.
It's good a time as ever to get in,
baby. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. I feel like this take is like he has gone, the extreme one way. I feel like there's a whole range on this, like, what will it mean for Tennessee and Tennessee fans? We've debated, we've talked about it. I think this is one of those things where it's like, I think right around the middle is really what the truth is, which is, yeah, I mean, like, if it's a bad season next year, like, some people are going to be upset, okay? Some people who right now are like, yeah, all right, Josh, are going to be like, well, this sucks. And if we had Nico this year, we would have won this game, and then we'd be a playoff contender. That'll happen. But also this whole, like, I just also don't buy the idea that it's just going to be this complete reversal and Josh Heupel gets run out of town a few months from now. I just think there's a middle ground, and that's what it will be. There's always, in huge fan bases, and we know in this fan base, very loud, very irrational people. I mean, Vol Twitter is incredible when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, they're screwed. I mean, I guess you could say they're likely or potentially screwed for this year, but they also could be better off eventually. Who knows what's going to happen? If one of these young guys is going to turn out to be great, if they get some in the portal. I will say, Robby, I was looking yesterday, just like Nico made his, new home yesterday. I thought it was kind of important to see if Tennessee kind of had a plan and we were going to see it immediately, or if it's still kind of in the search mode right now. And, I'm a little less optimistic for their chances after yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if they can pull anything off here. And if they do, like, at this point, if they do pull something off, if they land a quarterback in the portal, is it somebody that is unquestionably the starter? Or at this point, is it going to be someone who is in a legitimate competition with Jake Merklinger? Now, I'm sure you may end up saying that they're in competition, with Jake Merklinger at the end of this, but I think we'll probably know whether or not it's a legitimate guy that comes in and is unquestionably going to be the starter. That's going to be hard to find. And look, Tennessee fans have thrown out a bunch of different names, and we've talked about some of them here on the show. But like you also, the money's great, and the money always talks. And I'm sure that Tennessee, if they really want somebody, will throw an offer that's going to be really competitive. But I think you also have to think about the other side of this, Joe, is this is late in the game if you're one of these quarterbacks to just pick up and move and go somewhere else and think that you're going to be successful from the jump next year. I'm not saying you can't do it, but a lot of these quarterbacks that Tennessee fans want are in pretty decent situations where they are. And I think they got to factor in like the pros and cons of just picking up and going at this point where it'll be basically May before you get there.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, it's way less than ideal. There is no question about that. Now, I think you pointed this out. I think you pointed this out earlier this week. We can't remember whoever said anything today on the show, but
yeah, it's a tough one.
This whole, but again, Hendon Hooker was, Hendon Hooker didn't have like a record-breaking 2021 season, but go look at his numbers from 2021. They're pretty freaking good. And of course,
31 touchdowns and 3 picks.
Yeah, I mean, you'll take that. And that was again a guy in his first year in a system who, as of spring ball they did. So he did have a spring ball with it. Now, of course, he came in to Pruitt, and then now that stuff happened. He hung around, so he did have the spring. But you're talking about a guy who had to totally different from what he ran at Virginia Tech, and then eventually took over and maybe it wouldn't have looked as good, if he would have started. He lost the job to Joe Milton. If he would have started right away, maybe it doesn't look as good in the first month, but obviously he got it in that first year and was pretty freaking good. So it's not impossible.
Well, look, I wondered, this happened before the portal actually opened yesterday, but I was listening to our friends at the VolQuest podcast yesterday, Joe, and they have been talking throughout the spring about how good Jake Merklinger's looked, and that was even before all the Nico stuff went down. And the other day, they're like, I had somebody tell me that Jake Merklinger and Nico looked pretty close to the same. So here we are getting into that. We're going to see. Maybe it is as simple as Heupel looks around. He wants some depth, but Merklinger is going to be the guy at the end of the day. We'll see.
You never know. I mean, it's not like the craziest thing in the world. Like you said, to just assume he's going to be really good that's way too optimistic, but it's not like there's no chance. And speaking of, we've been talking today about spin and the Team Nico spin, and it's pretty amazing. And we still have distinguished gentlemen not understanding that, like we are listening to both sides of the story. We understand that. We also have seen this Team Nico lie. Like we've seen this Tennessee lie. Sure. There's spin coming out. I see like John Bryce, who has very good sources at Tennessee. Now you got stuff coming out about, well, actually he missed some practices last year and he missed, autograph sessions and left hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. And again, I'm not saying that's true, or I'm not saying that's untrue, but this is the time now when both sides are going to put their spin out. The problem is the family spin on this wasn't about money is just absolute garbage. It's garbage, and everybody knows it. So yes, there's going to be spin. Again, it's just like when the Titans, when they fired John Robinson, there's spin coming from inside that organization about, this is the right move and Vrabel's the guy. Then Vrabel gets fired. Oh, but see, here's some things about Vrabel that aren't very good, but Rand's the guy, and on and on and on. This always happens.
Yep, absolutely. It is time for the best and worst things in sports. Coming up next, we'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Keep those coming. Speaking of the text line, you can win an exclusive Keith Urban experience. Text in the keyword Keith to 615-737-1025 and receive a link to sign up for a chance to win all-inclusive tickets to the Eurostone Club at Bridgestone Arena to see Keith Urban, plus also a chance for you to win $1,000 in cash as well. Again, text in the keyword Keith to 615-737-1025. Best and worst in sports up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
The best and worst of the sports week. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst. You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle. It's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is that time of the week. Time for the best things and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode, kick us off with your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Best, playoff Jimmy. Let's freaking go, Jimmy Butler. Let's go. He was unbelievable in the play-in game for the Golden State Warriors in a great game. Went over the Memphis Grizzlies. Bad officiating, great game. And, man, I tell you what, it's fun to be rooting for Jimmy Butler. I guess I was rooting for with your Heat, who, by the way, nice way to destroy the Chicago Bulls season and get them the hell out of here. Bye, Bulls.
Yeah, I got some things to say about this stupid play-in tournament here in a minute.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan either, but I am a big fan of playoff Jimmy. And even if it's really play-in Jimmy, he was dominant. And Houston Rockets better watch out, man. That's all I have to say. Head on a swivel, Houston Rockets. Here come the Golden State Warriors. My worst, the whole Nico things. I mean, you're going to let me go first, and I'm going to have sometimes take the low-hanging fruit. I'm sorry. But
okay.
Of all the different things about this, like, so here's one right here. It's like the spin and the overreactions. I mean, distinguished gentleman stuff today is comical. All due respect, distinguished gentleman on the YouTube chat. But like James.
And remember, he's saying with all due respect.
Exactly. Key phrase. So real quick, text line here, James. It's not going to be hard to match Nico's production while he was at Tennessee. As long as Merklinger can hand the ball off, miss a bunch of deep throws, he will easily match Nico. So many games last year, Nico had easy throws. I responded to him. I said, do you remember the Bama game second half last year? Because it was like, oh, there's the guy that they signed. Robby, at the end of last year or all this offseason, at any point did either of us say, ooh, Nico, that's a problem. Ooh, man,
no.
You might want to get rid of that guy. I mean, let's take it easy here a little bit, okay?
No, like we said, he needed to take a jump.
Yes.
And we'll see whether or not he does. But like it was not perfect his year as a starter at Tennessee. But there was certainly, I think, a lot to build on. They did, make the college football playoff. So there is that. Ian Safari, your best and worst things in the world of sports.
I think I'm going to have to, for the best, we'll go best first, of course. Always good news first. I think I'm going to have to go Rory.
Nice.
Rory in the Grand Slam. It's kind of also the low-hanging fruit. But
we can't miss the big one.
So
that's
I mean,
good.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There was another one I had on here, but
you can always give us your honorable mentions.
Yeah, honorable mentions. Just the NHL playoffs starting up this week. Technically it hasn't started yet. I guess it starts Saturday. Preds aren't in it, so. But Rory Grand Slam, Masters after missing the putt to send it to the thing and end up to the playoff and end up getting it over Rosie, so that was good. And worst, not to be political here, but whoever is responsible for that college football trophy drop, that might be the worst thing there.
I saw that. Hold on to the trophy.
Yeah, between the fumble, between the players and the VP, you would think someone would be able to handle that okay. Did not go well.
So you got to hold on to the trophy. People have dropped the Stanley Cup before. It still is amazing to me, Joe, especially when you saw how much like he was hopped up on avocado tequila, that when Tom Brady was chucking the Lombardi trophy from the boat over the water, that didn't end up in total disaster.
So you're using this opportunity to fluff Brady a little more. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, of all the ones that have hit the ground or had problems, that would have been the one where I thought that would be the most likely.
You would have thought, even with avocado tequila coursing through his veins, he still got it done. Yeah, boy, that was a rough scene. That was a rough scene with the Ohio State trophy this week.
Yeah, not pretty.
No.
Yeah. I got to echo Ian on the Masters. It was awesome. The Rory part of it was great, but just the whole tournament. Like it was, I'm a little bit more of a golf lunatic than most people. So like I watched the entire thing, but like the Sunday part of it especially was just high drama and really what sports are all about. So it was awesome to see that on Sunday. This NBA play-in tournament, I just think is so stupid. And I really hope, and I know the money is there for it, and that's why it's happening. I really hope like the NHL doesn't eventually adopt this. Gary Bettman has talked about being against it and not loving the idea of a play-in tournament. I hope he sticks by that and that TV doesn't ultimately end out. I mean, look, the NBA has 30 teams. 16 of them make the playoffs. So you're talking about already more than half the league making the playoffs. Like, there's no reason for me to watch a 10 seed have a chance to make a playoff game. And look, the Golden State Memphis game was entertaining. Frankly, the Heat last night, even though it's my team, that was not an entertaining game against the Bulls. Like, I just hate the whole concept of the play-in tournament. And maybe I'm old man yelling at cloud, but I just think, Joe, it's the dumbest thing in the NBA besides the stupid in-season tournament. Apparently, Adam Silver really loves his tournaments.
Yeah, Adam Silver, he's no David Stern. No, it's dumb. I agree, and I really hope the NHL doesn't do it. I mean, it is what it is. So, like, if your team's in it, then you. I mean, that's the thing is like Golden State was the 7, and they still have to play in this thing too. That's another part about it that's dumb. You could be out of the playoffs as the 7th best team in your conference.
Yeah, it's
a lot of things about it are dumb.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jared from Spring Hill, Joe, not letting this go, says best is he didn't know it was the NBA playoffs. The worst is Cam Ward's Fortnite stream.
Wow.
Jared from Spring Hill, very, very against the Fortnite stream from Cam Ward, as we learned yesterday on the show.
There was another vote on here for just the Traylon Burks valuation.
Yes.
As a worst. I like Ed's, hands down, depending on what time last Sunday. Rory was both best and worst in sports.
That is true.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, look, Stilly talked about this a little bit yesterday with the Cam Ward stuff on the Fortnite stream. Like sometimes you just got to be able to read the room and get it. And look, I think if you're a Titans fan, his ability to say, you know what, these are my guys now. I'm leaning in. I kind of like it from Cam Ward. So he's up there, Jared from Spring Hill. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean he's already starting to give his teammates some confidence.
Yeah.
Brian
says the best is the Stanley Cup playoffs are coming, and a lot of votes on the text line, obviously, for Nico. Brian says he's full of bleep. So some harsh words from Nico and his family on the text line. Logan says the best is the St. Louis Blues. It's incredible. The Preds should try firing the coach halfway through the season, and that's the approach they should take. Well, it's interesting Logan brings that up. We're going to get into the Predators coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. What is next for them now that the season has come to an end? And will Andrew Brunette be a part of things as the Predators evaluate how they got to this point and move ahead here in the offseason? We're going to start with a conversation with Alex Doherty from the Tennessean coming up next. Take your thoughts on all things Predators as well. 615-737-1025 on our text line. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning. The Nashville Predators season comes to an end last night. They win 5-1 against the Dallas Stars. And now we get into what is going to be a very, very interesting offseason for the Predators. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Alex Doherty from the Tennessean, who does a great job covering the Nashville Predators. Alex, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. The season is finally over, and we can focus on never remembering that this season ever happened again.
I think a lot of Predators fans would love to sign up for that. So, Alex, let's just start here. I mean, we've known that this has been a long slog to the end of this for a while now. And now that we've finally gotten to the end of this point, it's decision time here. So, Andrew Brunette obviously has been in the crosshairs of a lot of Predators fans throughout the year. I think a lot of Predators fans are expecting that there could be a move made at the head coaching part of this. What about you? What do you make of where things currently stand with Andrew Brunette, and how likely do you think it is that the Predators could move on from him?
If I had to guess right now, I would say Andrew Brunette is back for next season. But really, if you think about it, I was thinking about it on the drive home last night, and I said, basically, all that really means is Andrew Brunette gets 2 more months, right? He gets October and November of this next season to prove that he can so he's had 2 seasons, right? He's had a good season and he's had a poor season. He has 2 more months to prove that that the good season is really what he can bring, and that the bad season was just a fluke, right? Because if no matter what happens this offseason, if they go into next year and by Thanksgiving are no better than they are now, or worse, or even just a little bit better, if they're not clearly much better than they are now, I think he's gone by Thanksgiving, right? By December, Trotz follows the sort of usual pattern of teams that fire their coach midway through the season, kind of like the Blues did, and find another coach, and then maybe go from there. I think Brunette is in a fortunate position, a very fortunate position to having Barry Trotz as his boss, right? Because Barry Trotz is used to, his whole experience in the NHL has been, you've got to give your coach time. And he had the advantage of having that while he was coach under David Poile. He's told stories many times about how there were times where he thought he was going to get fired, but they stuck it out and it worked out in the long run. And they found success and things worked out. And I think the same kind of thing happened with Barry when he was in Washington, and that worked out. So I think Brunette has the advantage that Barry Trotz knows. You can't just you have to have some loyalty and some consistency, as long as Brunette is doing the things that as long as Brunette is also focusing on what he can fix. And to that, I would go to what he said last night after the game. He had some really interesting comments about how, he said something like, I'm going to lock myself up for a while and figure out some solutions and figure out what I did wrong, what I can do better, as opposed to just saying like, we sucked. We'll see what happens next year. He knows that he's got to do a lot of work too. So if I had to guess, I would say he's back.
That all makes sense, Alex. A couple follow-ups. I guess I'm going to try to make it a 2-question question. One is, I hear what you're saying about, that totally makes sense. That's how things work in this league. Are we sure that Trotz, if he does keep Brunette, I think we'd all guess he would right now, that he would follow the traditional path of, okay, it's not working out at Thanksgiving, let's fire the coach. And also, if that's the way they go, I mean, like you said, you just mentioned the Blues. They are the absolute. That's their brand, right? It's like fire a coach midway and just absolutely turn it around. But what's the cost benefit of, like, if you're going to go in a different direction, giving yourself a full off season with the new coach, as opposed to, I know that sometimes those obviously those firings and hirings in season can jolt a team, but isn't there a case to be made that if it's that close, that you should just let the next coach fully install everything and have a new direction going into next year?
I think the answer to that is Barry Trotz has to be pretty honest about what he did wrong for this season. I think that the plan of going into the season with your center depth the way it was flawed from the beginning. They went into it with Tommy Novak as their top line center, and that was probably the biggest mistake they made all year, is they did not have a real center at the top of the lineup that mattered the most, playing with Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. Like that was the worst. That was probably the worst decision of the offseason. I think also he knows that obviously they will never say this, but Barry knows that goaltending was a big problem this year, and that has almost nothing to do with Andrew Brunette. Like that, other than the fact that the defense in front of them wasn't as good. UC Saros had a terrible year. His numbers just reflect that. And I don't think Barry could look at Andrew Brunette and say, well, why wasn't your goaltender better? Having said that, coaches do get fired when there's bad goaltending. So that happens a lot. But I just feel like after this next little couple weeks stretch of analysis and conversation, but with players and everything, I feel like Barry would probably admit that there's a whole lot more than just like the system or what the coach is saying, that there were a lot of flaws from the beginning, that the plan from last summer to just like spend a bunch of money and try to build a team was not good enough. And maybe this is being a little too painting a rosy picture of how Barry Trotz would see it. But like, I just feel like he's got to look at himself and think, I didn't necessarily set up the right system here for them to succeed. We need to retool some things, fix the back end, fix the center position, and try it again and see. And like I said, that's why I think, obviously if Brunette is back, he is going to be on a very, very short leash, and he basically gets 2 more months, like 25 more games to see if he can prove that this is a success. So yeah, I think Barry has a lot to examine with himself as well as Andrew Brunette does.
So Alex, how much do you think that his decision, and by his I'm talking about Trotz's, to bring Brunette back or to not, has already been made? And how much of it do you think is reliant upon like what he uncovers here in the exit meetings? Like, it was interesting. He was on with Stillman yesterday, and Stillman gave him the opportunity to say that Brunette's coming back, and he wouldn't do it. He said, he's still got to go through the process here. So like, how much do you think, depending on what he hears with some of these players, whether it's Stamkos or Marchessault or pick your veteran, like how much of an open door do you think there is there in terms of making that decision fully after he hears from those guys?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I think he's probably willing to listen to a lot of options, but he also knows that like he has more information than all of them, on like what decisions were made, why Brunette did what he did on a certain lineup decision. And he probably knows he obviously is coming at it from a coach perspective. So he's always going to, I'm just picturing a scenario where Barry's in a room with a player and the player's complaining about everything that went wrong and saying it was this, it was that. Barry in the back of his mind is going to have a coach's instinct to be like, well, you don't know exactly what happened. You don't know why that he made that decision. There's probably something else about it. So I'm obviously guessing here. I'm not in the room there and knowing what's happened, but I feel like Barry knows the advantage here is that Barry has been a coach and he knows how balancing, personalities and balancing skill type and play type and who's playing well and who's not playing well, who's playing hard, who's not playing hard is a lot harder. So like, if he just gives if he goes through it all and every player is like, the system is broken. Brunette doesn't know what he's doing. It's all broken. He's going to have to consider that. But I don't think that that's what players are going to think. I think players like Bruno. I think that they know that they did not perform. I think they shot poorly all year. Their offense was bad because they were shooting bad, not necessarily because they couldn't find chances. And again, like I said, the goaltending starts with the back end. Like they were letting in way too many goals they shouldn't have, and losing games because of it. So I think he has not. I do not think that he has made up his mind. I think he's honest when he's talking to Jared Stillman there to say, I don't think that he knows for sure. Yep, I'm not bringing him back. I think it would take a lot for him to have those conversations and come away and say, you know what, it's time to let Brunette go.
Alex, first of all, I just want to say we appreciate your time. I know that you've got a lot of preparation for the Milwaukee playoffs.
I was going to say, Joe, this is crunch time. This is when the show really starts. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, are you moving up there soon? Like, have you got your place picked out?
Yeah, I got my Brewers season tickets. I'm ready to cover the what's the basketball team there?
The Bucks.
The
Bucks.
Yeah, if you're gonna live there, you better know.
Yeah, I got some great places for brats I can advise you on. But you mentioned earlier goaltending, and like you said, they will never ever say it. I mean, no one in the NHL will ever just say their goalie stunk. No one, we know that. But what's your concern level with UC Saros? What's your confidence level that he can look like UC Saros again next year?
Yeah, my confidence level is not all that high. Especially when I was thinking about how, remember, last season last off season rather, they bring Mitch Korn back, right? And I think the thought was two-part. Maybe they knew that they had a situation with Askarov, and they were like, okay, well, we can find a plan for him, and then that kind of blew up. But also it was like, Saros had a down year last year. I mean, he was not as good last year as he was the year before. So he's kind of gone down in performance 3 years now. And it resulted in probably the worst career of his worst year of his professional career. Right. I don't think it could get worse. I see no way that he could get worse from this year. But is this just kind of who he is now? I think it's possible. I mean, is he just like kind of a 900 save percentage kind of guy and never going to be much better than that because of who he is? I think they're going to have to just rethink, they need to have more of a tandem approach. And even though they're paying the guy a lot of money, like they've got to find a guy that can have a situation almost what Boston had with Ullmark and Swayman, where you find two guys that can do it. And you give them an equal chance, and each plays about 40 games, and that's what you do. And if that can improve Saros' numbers at all, that would help. But I am not confident that it's going to get much better. I don't think it can get worse. And I think there's there is something to the fact that the team didn't play well in front of him. I get that, but he just had some really bad games this year, and you cannot go into next year and think, well, it was a fluke year for him, because now we have 3 straight years of him going down, and it's not just a 1 year off. It's a trend now, and I would be very worried that it could never improve. And you got 8 long years of that, so you got to have a plan moving forward to have another guy that can balance Saros out to make it hurt a little bit less. I know that sounds terrible, but that's about the best you can ask for at this point.
Well, Alex, it's going to be a very fascinating offseason. We're just starting it here today, so appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Absolutely. AHL playoffs begin next week, baby. Here we go.
Let's go.
Get pumped up. Let's do it. Alex Doherty from the Tennessee and our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. All right, so we'll take your thoughts on the Predators. The season has finally come to an end. You can start to shut the door on what was just a terrible regular season. What does it mean for Andrew Brunette? What does it mean for this offseason in terms of trying to get back to a place where you can be competitive again next year? We'll get into all that next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
So are you ready today to say, hey, Andrew Burnett is coming back next year as the coach?
No, not at all. I'm going to go through a whole process. Like I said, I'm going to talk to every player. I'm going to talk to every coach. I'm going to talk to all our management, and our decision will be based on that. Ownership, everything. So I owe it to players, myself, management, all the owners. I got to do that process, and there's no time frame for me. Probably next week, once I get through all the meetings, then we'll sort of see where we are and go from there. But Andrew's a good young coach, and part of all this year is based on. I'll put blame on myself, put it on the coaching staff, I'll put it on the players, because we have to do that together, and we didn't get it done.
That was Barry Trotz yesterday on with Jared Stillman for his weekly visit. Predator season comes to an end last night, and now the question is, Joe, what is next for Andrew Burnett? So he was given an opportunity there to say that Andrew Burnett is coming back. He did not want to do that. Says that there's, obviously a process that he's got to go through here. Did not necessarily want to put a timeline on it, but did say, maybe sometime next week you start to come into a decision on that front. So, Joe, as we sit here today, how do you view where you think things may be heading on the Barry Trotz decision with Andrew Burnett?
Yeah, I agree with what Alex Doherty said there. Good interview with Alex. Well, they painted a real pretty picture there in terms of the goaltending moving forward for the Preds. Whew, boy, tell you what. But again, I can't disagree with anything he said, and I can't disagree with him on Burnett. I think he'll be back, and I think it means that he's, short leash, whatever you want to call it, going into next year. Hot seat, one of the hot seat coaches. That's just the only thing is with Trotz, because as Alex said, as we've discussed, Trotz was part of a very unique situation in this league where patience was ample, beyond ample. Now, granted, that's also the old expansion days when expansion teams were going to suck for 2 years for sure, and it's a different deal. But he does have a coach mindset, and so first of all, I do think that's why he's back, and I just do wonder, is he indeed going to be on a real hot seat with Trotz going into next year, and it's just going to be. Because, again, I know it works sometimes, but I also I don't like that as a plan. It's kind of like with the Titans. Like if internally you view Brian Callahan as being on a hot seat right now, and man, you better show something real fast or you're out of here. I hate that in tandem with drafting a quarterback, and I also just don't like the idea of, if you have that much of a doubt about your coach, then go ahead and make the move now and just get a new coach. But I know that's what teams in this league do a lot.
Yeah, I tend to agree that it kind of feels like Burnett is going to be back. I don't know that I'm as strong as some others in that assertion. If I had to bet today, that's the way I'd put it, just based on the conversation around it and what Trotz has said. But I do think if you're him, you got to be pretty open to what your players say here. I think this is the time when they meet in the next couple of days here, where you need to be as honest as possible with your team. Be like, everything that you think I need to know right now. Like if you're Barry Trotz, and I'm talking to Stamkos, Marchessault, Forsberg, Yossi, all of them, and I'm saying O'Reilly. Every thought you have about where this is headed and the coach and his factor in his role in all this, I need to know about right now, because I think that has to be a big part of your decision here. So we'll see. I think you can be confident in your coach and trust that he has the ability to figure things out, and then get 6-7 weeks into the season next year, Joe. And if they start poorly again, you may just be forced to make a move at that point, right? It'd be like, you know what? We gave it a shot. I was confident in the guy. I still feel like maybe he'll be a good coach one day. But if you start horribly for the third season in a row to begin a season, then that's too much of a trend in my mind, and you got to make a change at that point. But I'd be really fascinated to see what the players have to say here in the next couple of days and how that shapes what Trotz does.
Yeah, no, I agree on the honesty. Look, maybe this is where I guess there's an advantage of having all these old guys who are who couldn't give a fart at this point. You know what I mean? Like those guys on their last contracts who have seen a lot in this league, they're going to be honest, right? Why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So I think you can younger players might be a little bit, I'm not going to go in there and rip the coach. I'm trying to stay in this league or whatever. But they got plenty of guys who they should just be feeling just fine about saying whatever they think. Now, I'm going to tell you 3 straight texts that we just got, Robbie, real quick on this, okay? Because I do think this is where it's going, okay? One texter, Dean from Old Hickory, if the Preds replicate this season next year, should Trotz be fired at the end of the season? Ethan from Lawrenceburg. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Fire Trotz. Brian, let Barry cook. So there you go. There's your 3 straight texts on this. I mean, and I get it. Like it's absolutely natural and it's fair to also look at the GM right now and wonder if there's a good direction. Now we also have Buster sent a novel, and I've had 2 novels on the text line today, Robbie, that are so long that I gave I ain't reading all that, but congratulations or sorry that it happened to you response.
Yeah,
Jared from Spring Hill too. But it was I think a more impassioned defense of Trotz. I mean, look, we're still right now, there's no spinning what this was. This season was a disaster. I also wouldn't say it's that everything he's done is bad. They are in position to to improve things, do some good things. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it's not a passing grade. It's not a good grade.
Yeah, I mean, look, I will say I'm confident in saying this. In most organizations, he would be fired. Like I have no doubt in my mind about that. Most organizations
Trotz would
around the league. No, I'm talking about Brunette. Like
Brunette.
he would be gone.
Okay, yes.
Like he would be gone after this. Like somebody in this league usually ends up paying the price, and a lot of times it is the coach. The Predators are a more patient organization. I mean, just go look through the history of their organization. Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, man. So it looks like because before the 18-game point streak, that people weren't super high on Brunette. After that, it was like, oh, yeah, we got a coach. So you got to ask yourself, is it more likely that the fluky part was the 18-game point streak or that we're the worst team in the league and going to be picking the lottery? Like one of them's true. We just don't know which is true. I think the fluky is the 18-game point streak. That's why during the streak, I was like, I would love to see this team lose to see if they could bounce back, because that's what good teams do. That's what the old Titans would do. They'd win 5 or 6 games, get smashed, and then come back and be really good again. So I think the point streak was super fluky, dude, and I think this is all just a mirage. I don't think any of it's good. Brunette's not good. Trotz might not even be good, dude. I think it's just all a mirage. I think we suck. I think we are the team that got smashed by Dallas and never really got better.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, look, Brunette, there is a track record there, Joe, of him demonstrating what I believe to be qualities of being a good coach. However, like I will say, if you want to argue the other side of it, you can. Like you can say, well, before they had that 18-game point streak, it was a whole lot of not good, and they were getting ready to sell off that year. Obviously, we know the way that things went this year. And look, we've talked about this before. I think people make a little bit too much of it just because of who Florida ended up with and a Hall of Fame head coach. But like the Panthers did have the option to keep him, and they didn't. So like if you want to go that route, you can if you're a Predators fan.
Absolutely. So real quick, I'll ask you this. We can lead in. You can answer on the other side. You just said in most organizations, Brunette would be fired. I would agree with that. In most organizations, what's Trotz's clock?
Oh, I think it's pretty quick, and we'll get more into that coming up next. Take your thoughts on the Predators, 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. Huge offseason beginning today for the Predators. What is next for Andrew Brunette? Will he be back as head coach? More coming next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Sounds take on Charlotte. Pregame beginning at 5:49. First pitch at 6:04. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. Also tune in to 102.5 The Game for Vanderbilt baseball as the Commodores take on Georgia at Hawkins Field. Pregame at 5:45. First pitch at 6 o'clock. Coverage also available at the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. We are taking your thoughts on the Predators and Andrew Burnett. What does the future look like now that the offseason has begun? Trotz was on with Stillman and Company yesterday and got through a bunch of interesting kind of different thoughts with Jared as the offseason gets underway here. And one thing that Jared brought up was Jonathan Marchessault. And Joe, we talked about him earlier this week about, how I had heard that maybe there were some people in both in the organization and outside of the organization connected to it that maybe weren't overly impressed with him all the time this year. And Stilly basically asked him, like, is Andrew Burnett the right for these veteran players? Here's what Barry Trotz had to say yesterday on with Stillman and Company.
That's something that I'll investigate. That's why we do exit meetings. That's why we talk to players and coaches and all that. That's an important piece for decision making. Some teams do it a little different. I don't have the coaching career that I had. I don't think we have the foundational pieces in Nashville. If David Poyle would have fired me again, year two, we were able to build something together, and that's what I want to do with Andrew and anybody I bring in as a coach and in my tenure as a GM. I want them to be part of a family, part of Smashville, part of the culture, all that. That's very important. So that's why it's really important that I do a thorough review with every player, every coach, and then we put it back together. And I'm very confident if we come back with the right attitude and do nothing, just let the kids play, we'll be a better hockey team, because I think there's enough people and enough understanding in that room that this year got off to a tough start. It never felt like we got to play some really meaningful games. I thought we'd be, in the be like Calgary, we'd be fighting there right till the end and get into if we got in the playoffs. And I thought we got some game changers, that guys that give them one chance, they can shoot the puck in the net. Our power play or penalty kill has been much better than it probably was last year. Our 5-on-5 game has to get better.
So that was Barry Trotz on with Jared yesterday, Joe. I thought that the answer was interesting because he talks about how, he wants to build like this family and this culture, but also says like he owes it to doing a thorough investigation, is what he called it, to see like what the players think and if Burnett's the right guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I appreciate, as we've talked about many times, Trotz, say what you will about the job he's done. I mean, it doesn't look great right now. His willingness to speak about these things, I do appreciate. I mean, he gives you more insight and I think more honesty on these things than most people in his position would.
So answering your question, like I said last segment, I think in most organizations, a season like this, with the expectations this team had coming into it, that Burnett probably would be fired. And I believe that. I think if you went down most organizations, that's probably the way that it would shake out. Like how does that affect the timeline for Trotz? I think in most organizations, like he'd probably be on the hot seat heading into next year. I just don't know that I believe that he is here, Joe. Like I think that Bill Haslam and ownership really trust him. Now, I will say this. I think the previous ownership group that did not have Bill Haslam as a part of it was patient, maybe sometimes to a fault, right? Like they were extremely patient with their coaches, with David Poyle specifically. And frankly, like Bill Haslam hasn't been around long enough in this role where I know exactly what he's going to be. Like he's not even really officially taking over until this summer. Now he basically has to this point, but I am interested to see, like, does Haslam approach things differently than it's been approached here in the past in terms of his patience level and his willingness to make moves maybe quicker than we've seen here before.
Yeah, I mean, that may be a question that really gets tested in about a year, because if it doesn't improve significantly, yes, I mean, I think Brunette at some point probably loses his job, which, like you said, I mean, that's NHL convention. NHL convention is probably right now, but also like GMs get fired quickly in this league too. Not as quickly, yeah, but it does happen. And this organization, it's a fantastic story, really of continuity, stability, consistent success. With David Poile and just the Poile and Trotz partnership, how long that lasted and all that. But at some point, you also, you don't have to, like, you're not going to like follow that storyline forever,
Right.
And look, I mean, I think Trotz is, I like, like the experience he brought. I like the coach's eye for a GM, and I certainly, I wasn't sitting here first guessing these signings last summer. I mean, we were both like, wow, that's a great signing. Wow, this team could be loaded. What a year this could be. But the results are the results, and that's ultimately how you're judged. And so I feel like for most franchises, Barry Trotz would be going into a critical year as a GM, even if it's only year 3. We'll see if that's actually the case here or not.
So what do you think the reaction from the Predators fan base will be if they sift through this here in the next few days and Barry Trotz reaches the conclusion that Andrew Brunette is back as head coach and their strategy for the offseason is basically going to be, let's go get this high draft pick. And look, who knows? Maybe they win the draft lottery. Maybe they're second or third, and whoever they pick is able to play on this roster next year. They maybe nibble around the edges in free agency, and they attempt to go pull off a big trade. Let's say that's the strategy. That's going to be what they try to do on a trade front. Like Barry Trotz has talked about they have draft capital and they need centermen and they haven't been able to find one, and he's going to continue to look for one. So what do you think the reaction is from the fan base if Brunette is retained here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like, again, I just feel like Preds fans shouldn't be surprised, So I think there's a lot of, I mean, it's probably split, maybe even more Preds fans than not would like to see the change made. I guess I'd probably guess that, but also I can't believe that it would be like outrage. I want to read this text real quick. On my point on Trotz, this texter says, I agree Trotz is honest. At first I thought it was awesome, but explaining to me why we suck and had the worst year ever and doing nothing about it doesn't make sucking and having the worst year ever feel any better, and I'm tired of it. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Like, this goes back to the old adage. Like, if you win, your style is great. If you lose, people don't like the way that you approach things.
Your
right?
personality, it's totally dictated by that. Yes.
Right. And that's the way it comes down to. And look, no matter which way you slice it, if Brunette's back, if Brunette's not back, it's a massive offseason for Trotz. Like, beyond the draft pick part of it, number one, they need to hit on this draft pick, whether it's first overall, third overall, fifth overall, whatever it is. They got this player that they draft needs to be a cornerstone player for this franchise moving forward. But beyond that, more in the short term, like, you got to find a way to get this turned around here. Like, I understand that he's talked about the plan, right? And the plan has always been to try to remain competitive and bring the young guys along. He also did say after they signed these guys last year that he wants to be a threat. And I don't think a threat is just like, well, I want to be a threat to make the playoffs. No, when I hear you say you want to be a threat, it's to challenge for a championship. And it would be such a disappointment if next year they're not a whole lot better, they miss the playoffs again, and you spend all this money to bring in Shea and Marchessault and Stamkos and all these guys, and you basically have nothing to show for it. Like, that's not a whole lot of people survive that in the NHL.
No doubt. Huge disappointment.
615-737-1025. Our phone number. We'll take more of your thoughts on the Predators. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode Coming up next, Charles Robinson will be with us at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
I saw you people talking about, the system is broken and we got to have rules and we need to have more regulation and we need to have.
Show me the link. Give me the link.
Oh, you all been crying about it.
Yeah. I just apologize to the team and staff and for being a distraction. It's stupid.
Make sure the jelly doesn't look like tomato sauce, please.
Pruitt's here to win. We're not here to waste people's time and give us a bunch of cliches. He's here to win. Starts today.
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. Joe, I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Now, before I get to what I want to talk about today, a couple of housekeeping items. I do want to reiterate what I said in the 6 o'clock hour. If people have asked, I did get my real ID. I finally figured it out. It ended up taking like twice as long yesterday, of course. So I waited, but I'm like, I'm not messing this up today. I'm getting it. So now we'll see if I actually get it in time for my May 19th flight. We'll see. Should be interesting. And then we'll see if I get fired if I don't. Anyway, also, I'd like to ask you, Robby. Now, I've had Stilly on there. We heard his beautiful voice, and he has, jumped all over me for getting in the text line during his show. It's usually during Jared versus Joe, and I just like some of the people like, yeah, Jared, and I'm like, oh, shut up, idiot. I won again. But we got Vingan in the text line here today in our show, going back and forth. Is that okay? Are we okay with that?
He's got to get out.
He's got to get out.
If we're kicking Stilly out, we got to kick Vingan out.
Well, it was Stilly trying to kick me out. But
Stilly, we've tried to kick.
We've
Stilly
tried to kick
out.
Stilly out before too. Yeah.
But for all Fridays when he hops in there.
But he says dumb stuff. I mean, Vingan's like he's it's a good conversation. Basically, Vingan. This texter Paul is talking about how like Vingan has kind of been all Vingan and Willie would be a good argument, with somebody else about the whole Saros thing. But Vingan's point is that he didn't cook Jared for the Saros take, which again, you and I think are aligned with Jared, by the way, on the Saros take for the most part. But the point,
mostly,
I mean, obviously, then he takes it too far, which is what Vingan's talking about. He cooked him because he compared his contract to Deshaun Watson. Because of course,
I'm not with him on that.
You got to take it over the cliff. Toonces is driving just fine. Everything's going fine. Then let's go off the cliff.
Yeah.
But I want to talk today. I got to say, like, I've been pretty, I'd say, overall, certainly for the draft process, I find a lot of the commentary around this guy exaggerated, kind of silly. I think some of it maybe even a little bit unfair. I like him a lot as a player. Again, I've said that many times. I think that people are making too much of something here because they don't like a certain person. Okay. But I got to tell you, man, Shedeur Sanders having his jersey retired at Colorado is just utterly moronic. Are you kidding me? I mean, again, Dion, I think he's been great in terms of entertainment value. He's also, he's like one of those coaches who can't even take like an actual question without flipping out. And he has to have his own media around him and all this stuff. There's some things that are problematic with Dion. Giving Shedeur Sanders, retiring his jersey at a place where Cordell Stewart's jersey is not retired. Michael Westbrook, Eric Bieniemy, for example. These guys don't have their jerseys retired at Colorado. Now, Travis Hunter as well. Travis Hunter won the Heisman. I mean, sure. Rashaan Salam also does have his jersey retired, by the way. I've seen some people out there saying he doesn't. He does. So, Travis Hunter, sure. Now, maybe I would argue, like, maybe wait a little bit.
Hey, has he even left the campus yet?
Yeah, but this is a new thing. This is another kind of could be a sub-rant of this whole let's immediately retire the jersey of the person who just left. I like a little bit of time before that happens. But Shedeur Sanders, he's Dion's son. He was good. Again, I like him as the best quarterback. He was Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. So it's not like there's no achievement here. Okay? 4,000 yards, 37 touchdowns, all that stuff. They broke all the school pass records. That's not jersey retirement. They didn't win anything with him. Yeah, they turned around the worst program in college football and made it okay. Right? They made it. I think they went 8-9 the last 2 years. So like good. Like you turned it around. You were the worst. You were good. You were a good player. You had a great season. You made it okay. You're Deion's son. And I'm sorry, like all this stuff with, I would never draft Shedeur because Deion will cry. I don't give a crap. Shadeur's a good player. And I think he's gotten some public stuff that's unfair. But like if I were Shedeur, I would be embarrassed by this. I would actually be like, Dad, no, we shouldn't retire my jersey. Travis, yes, Travis won the Heisman. We should not retire my jersey. He is not a jersey retirement worthy player whatsoever. And I just think it makes Deion look ridiculous.
I totally agree. Like I had to check that the other day when I saw that on Twitter. I was like, is that real? I'd like look and make sure that was real. I think it's absurd. Like I understand like Travis Hunter getting his jersey retired. Again, I think it's weird that you're doing it and he's not even been drafted yet. Like he's not even left. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing there.
Here's your degree and your retired jersey.
And as I said earlier in the week, again, this is more of a Florida problem than it is anybody else. It's not Colorado's fault that this is the case, but it is amazing that we live in a world in college football where Shedeur Sanders is about to have his jersey retired and Tim Tebow doesn't at Florida. Like, it's pretty wild to me.
That is wild. That is very wild. And yeah, like if you're Colorado, I understand. Colorado, I guess, is really the right way to say it, right? I
think it's Colorado.
People from there say it's Colorado. I don't know. It's like Nevada. It's definitely Nevada. People from Colorado say it's Colorado. I'm just saying. So we can
debate. I don't care what they say.
Yeah. You're Colorado, damn it. You're going to like it.
Yeah.
But if you're seriously, if you're a fan of that school, like if anybody remembers, like Cordell Stewart, he was an incredible player. And they were like a legit big time winning program then. Eric Bieniemy was the star running back for a national championship team at Colorado. Like, those are guys. Like, if you're going to do this, you certainly can't do this before those guys have their numbers retired or jerseys retired.
Just wild. We'll have Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports coming up next. We'll get into the Titans and all things NFL and NFL draft with him as we're a week out from the big day in the NFL coming up next week. That's next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning. And we head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, good morning. How are you?
What's going on, guys? How you doing this morning? Oh, somebody got up late.
I did. Let me tell you, man. I almost missed the show. I woke up and I was like, wait a minute, it's light outside. That's not typically what's supposed to be the case when I'm waking up, but I got there. I got to my upstairs computer office anyway.
Do you think the universal reaction, because I did this repeatedly in college, I always would miss my 8 a.m.s. I would wake up late. And do you think everybody's universal reaction when they blow it in the morning is they open their eyes and they go, man, it's a lot of light out.
Because I thought my alarm went off and it didn't. And I was like, man, it's so weird. It's not usually this bright at 4:45 in the morning. Wow.
I think that's the universal human reaction is it should not be this light right now. Like something's wrong.
Hold on, man. Yeah. You scheduled 8 a.m. classes. My earliest class after my freshman year was 12:40 p.m. What are you talking about?
My junior year, the first time, so I had like a studio apartment off campus, and I had an 8 a.m. math class. This is because I'm an idiot. Ugh. And it was a hike across campus. And probably my most memorable blow it moment, it was finals, or it was midterms. It was snowy out, it was horrible. And my little studio apartment was like over like an office complex. So every morning people would be coming in the parking lot, and I had a window right next to my bed, and it was a really small studio apartment. And I wake up, open my eyes, and I'm like, it's totally light out right now. I look and it's like 7:55, right? And it takes me 15 minutes to get to my math class, 20 minutes, whatever. I immediately jump out of bed, scream like a profanity, and I'm in my underwear, nothing else. And I'm standing right next to the window, and I turn to the right, and there were had to be a half a dozen women walking into the building, the office building below, and I'm standing next to the window.
Look at this screaming naked man.
Yeah, and we screaming profanities at us out the window or through his window as he's naked. Yeah, it was awesome. Needless to say, I made it, but I think I squeaked. I passed that class by the absolute bare minimum. It was a 61% type of grade.
Math sucks.
All that matters is you passed. It's half the reason I'm in this business, because there's less math.
That's right.
There's very few algorithms. I ask anytime there's a math problem, I call a cap guy. I'm like,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So Charles, it's been as you can imagine, a very busy week around here on the Nico Iamaleava front. I'm just curious from your perspective from afar, what do you make of what all's gone down with Nico Iamaleava, and has there been any buzz in NFL circles about the decisions that he's made?
Well, I do think it's interesting. First and foremost, I'll play devil's advocate here for a minute. It's from the NFL perspective, I don't think anybody's unhappy to see him get out of the Tennessee offense, because I know evaluators just don't like that offense. They don't like it really for any position almost on the field, even running backs. I go through the running back stack this year, obviously a prominent running back that's in this draft. And when you talk to people down, they're like, there's just so much space that this kid is running through. And it makes it really hard to know, what it's going to look like when he's in a bunched up formation and just doesn't have these running lanes. The wide receivers, it's always they don't line up on the line of scrimmage enough. It's just wonky, or the splits are crazy. The quarterbacks, it's almost like it's difficult to evaluate almost anything they're doing from a schematic and read coverage standpoint. And it's when you hear Hendon Hooker, you see the Lions sign Kyle Allen, and then they basically say hey, Hendon's got to win the backup quarterback job. It's a rough go in the NFL right now for Tennessee quarterbacks, it just is what it is. So when you go to Tennessee, you know that. I mean, we know that by now. So anybody who commits to the quarterback spot and then later says, well, it's the offense. I mean, you've known this for a while now. So it's a little hard to believe that ultimately is what drove this. I agree with you guys. I think it's money. And but that said, I will tell you that NFL, even though they don't know what Tino Sunseri is going to run at UCLA, NFL types would like to see him in a different offense. And, it's probably going to be RPO based, basically what Indiana did. There'll be a ton of pre-snap motion, which is fine. A lot of NFL teams love to do pre-snap motion now with their receivers. It'll have some more sort of pro-style leanings, and maybe the formation, the width of the formation will be more something that NFL guys can really understand and evaluate properly. So from that respect, I don't think it'll be bad for him. But that said, the messiness of how this went down is not attractive. And it will certainly be something that someday he will have to go through a vetting process when he enters the NFL draft. And I guarantee you this will be one of the prominent things where they're going to ask, like, what exactly happened there? And, how did this all play out? And I'll say this about the NIL era, and I may have said this on the show before. You do have a lot of people in the NFL. They're like, we used to have this prominent question about, like, how does a player and his family grapple with money? Well, we don't have that anymore because we see a lot of it now in college. It's like one of the very few silver linings, other than probably the quarterback transfer portal, that the NFL enjoys. But now they don't have to ask a kid, what does it look like when you get money, or you and your family experience money? Like, is it going to cause a lot of like off-field stuff for you, or is there going to be a lot of drama, like football-related drama now because of it? They're getting some of those answers, and I guarantee you that's going to factor into his NFL vetting experience.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, that's my thing on the I hadn't thought about the money aspect of that, how it actually is a little bit of a benefit. But I think people have overstated a little bit. Like the NFL is going to be, look at him like he's a selfish kid and all this stuff. It's like they're gonna ask the questions. Of course they're gonna ask questions. But that is a really I still believe, Charles, that like there's gonna be a quarterback that comes out of this offense that it ends up being a great quarterback in the NFL, and it probably takes away some of the concerns. But until that happens, everything you said, I mean, it's fair, right? It's just they do things you can't do in the NFL, which I would not change that. If it works for you and you win, great. But you do wonder at some point if it becomes too much of a narrative.
And the thing is, too, Joe, you don't know how NFL offenses are going to adjust moving forward. Like, the funny, like, people think it's NFL down. It's not. It's college up. Like, a lot of things that get changed in the NFL come from the college level. And, so, like, it's interesting because I think even, like, the formations, like, how they're like, how does your line of scrimmage look as an offense? You see some teams, they're way more stretched out than they used to be in terms of the width of the formation. And, I think that comes from the college level. And another thing that I think is sort of forcing it from the NFL standpoint is they're having such a hard time grappling with like play ready offensive linemen, because the offensive linemen are coming out so much less developed or doing NFL, quote unquote, NFL type stuff that, teams don't have a choice but just to take guys and hope that they can either coach them up or find a space in the middle between what they were doing in college and what they, historically have been asked to do on the NFL level and figure it out. So 10 years from now, the NFL's offenses could look a lot more like Tennessee's offenses. Like, who knows? But it's definitely, and I think Tom Brady's talked about this, it's affected the quarterback position where you just have a different kind of quarterback now coming into the NFL. And I don't think it should be a surprise that some of the guys, particularly out of the last class, that had a lot of success immediately were older players who had entered the portal, had moved around a little bit, experienced different things. Sean Payton went on and on about Bo Nix, like how happy he was to see him both in the Auburn offense and the Oregon offense to go through, a lot of like kind of adversity where he had people basically saying his career was done, he was a bust and all this stuff. I don't think the NFL is unhappy, particularly with the quarterback position when it comes to the portal, because they're like, hey, it takes kids who might be in a situation where they're never really going to have an opportunity to develop where they are, or they don't, like their surroundings or whatever. They can move to a different spot and then maybe jumpstart their career. The Nico thing's a little different, because he had success at Tennessee. Projected out, it looked like it would be a lot of success at Tennessee. But I'm not going to lie to you. Like, his evaluation was going to be difficult coming out of Tennessee the same way it was for Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton.
So, Charles, we're sitting here a week away from the first round of the draft, and I'm trying to look and see where Shedeur Sanders is going to go. So I guess my question for you is this. Do you think that it's a guarantee that Shedeur Sanders is the second quarterback taken in this class, or could that change maybe more than people think heading into next week?
Yeah, I don't think it's a guarantee. So first things first, like, got to dispel what kind of happened with the Giants, because I think it projected, the Giants are having a workout with Shedeur. It's so late. We're pressed up against the draft. And, is this ownership? Is ownership stepping in and pressing the pick at 3? No, it's not. This was on the books, guys, for a while. And it was because Shedeur told teams, look, I want to get the pro day in, and then I can do private workouts. I'm not going to do private workouts with, 15 teams or whatever, but I want to do my private workouts after the pro day. Well, the pro day was late. We're talking about all the way into April for the pro day. And then by then, you have a number of teams that are like, okay, just from a schematic standpoint of like who we can get together to put on the full kind of pro day we want, our window is like mid-April, which is why you're seeing the Giants bring in 3 quarterbacks, Shedeur, Tyler Shuck, and Jalen Milroe in this window. It's not suddenly indicative of, they're pressing the panic button on the 3rd pick and they have to find, Shedeur now being forced in there by John Mara. That's not the case. It was just scheduling. So now it doesn't preclude, I think, the Giants are moving up out of the 2nd round and trying to get a quarterback who may be sliding in the 1st. But I will say this, we did the all juice team, and you end up talking to a lot of executives, a lot of scouts, a lot of personnel people, some coaches, and the quarterback stack from 2 to 5, which would be Shedeur, Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, and Jalen Milroe. There's a lot of really differing opinions, and it's kind of fascinating to hear where people are approaching it from. And one guy in particular that, like Milroe, I'm surprised as it's getting closer. I've talked to a number of teams that are like, look, it's because it's a difficult quarterback class because there's not a bunch of elite guys. So you start to look for elite traits. And there's definitely an agreement and I think it's across a multitude of teams, that when you look at Milroe, he has a bunch of elite traits in terms of, size, arm strength, but his running immediately could be utilized. Like, it is ready to go, like, on the highest levels of quarterbacks that have come into the league. When you think about Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick, Cam Newton, he is viewed as being that kind of runner immediately, hitting the ground. So they're like, already you have this aspect of his game that is elite and will be elite from day one in the NFL. You could put him on the field in an RPO situation where you're really designing a run for him, and he's gonna tear it up for you. And so then they get beyond that and they're like, all right, his passing needs a lot of work. It got considerably better from 1 year to 2. Maybe it would have taken 4 years to get it together. Can you now draft him as a backup and then spend a year or 2 really ratcheting on his passing, really refining what he does? And so I think that has led some teams later in the 1st, like, that might just sit at their pick and go, you know what, we feel like we got a quarterback for the next year or 2. Let's grab Milroe, and we'll take the elite level of his game, which really raises his floor as a player, because we know he can do this. And then we'll figure out, how we can refine him as a passer and spend a lot of time on that. I wouldn't be surprised if Milroe ends up being a 1st round pick. Like, we're maybe right at the tail end, a team that wants 5 years control, either moves up or, figures out a way to take him at the tail end of 1. But Jackson Dart, to me, like, if you ask me right now, what does the stack feel like? Cam, probably Jackson Dart. And then I think there's kind of this argument right now over, is it Milroe or Shedeur at the 4th spot? What do you like? Yeah, it's really.
Wait, at the 4. Wait, so you have Shug too ahead?
No, I think Shuck. The thing about Shuck is, he has, in terms of like the NFL readiness, the size is all there. His arm, anytime you talk to evaluators about him, they talk about just the splash of the arm talent that they see. And, but he, the age is there. I mean, there's a lot of advanced age. Some teams are like, is this Chris Winkie again, where we're getting a guy in his late 20s and, it's just never going to really fully materialize. Others look at him kind of the way they looked at, I thought, the top end of like Hendon Hooker evaluations. It was like, hey, look, if you feel like he works and you get 10 years out of him, that's fine. That's great. That's worth even, a late first potentially. But I would not put, I think Tyler is, I think now when I look at it, I would not be surprised if all 5 quarterbacks end up being off the board by like the 34th or 35th pick. Like that, you just see this car crash at the end of the first round, the beginning of the second round, where all these quarterbacks suddenly get, snapped up, and whoever wasn't able to move up in the first round has some candidate to take at the top of the second. The one thing that might jam this up, though, is interesting. I had a couple of teams tell me like, hey, so far, not like there's really advanced trade talks going on, but it feels super rich to try to move into the top of or the bottom of the first round. And I'm thinking like, is this Howie Roseman at 32, who's basically telling the Giants like, yeah, we're going to let you move to 32 and get whatever quarterback is sliding, and you get 5 years of control over him. That's going to cost you a lot. But I think there is kind of a belief that at the end of the first, it's a little richer to trade up into those picks. And part of that I also think is assessments from, like, I had one guy tell me, hey, picks 15 to 75 are going to be insane. He's like, probably the toughest draft to understand how it will unfold is because like picks 15 to 75, you could see similar grades on players from picks 15 to 75, which is bananas. And so it really just comes down to, what do you value? What are you selecting for? What's your need? And, I think it's going to throw a lot of teams for a loop. So the quarterbacks are, like we said this all, I think when we started this, I was like, Shedeur is going to be the story of the draft. I still believe that 100%.
So, okay. So, yeah, because this is fascinating. The Milroe thing's fascinating. So first of all, the information you're getting, at least it does kind of match up with like when they announced that he was going to be at the draft, I'm like, what? Why?
Right. Yeah.
So
me too.
clearly, like that matches up with, and I get that. We talked about yesterday. It's like, look, if you designed something where you are emphasizing the running as much as you are, to me in this league, a lot of guys are going to fall apart if they run the ball that much. But he's a big, strong. He could be an incredible runner. That's really fascinating. So when you say the story, so are you saying Shedeur Sanders could be the 5th quarterback and go in the 2nd round?
No, I don't. Look, I'll say this. Can you find someone in the NFL to tell you that they think that? Yeah, you can. But I tend to discount it. I think that, there's enough, like he really is a good fit at 9 for the Saints because of, he has a limited athletic profile, but I think I told you guys before, like if you get him in the right situation, with the right offensive mind, I think Kellen Moore is more than fine. Dak Prescott, limited limited athletic profile somewhat. And Kellen did great things with Dak. You put Shedeur in a place in New Orleans where he plays in a dome, 8 to 9 home games a year, depending on the flip-flop of the 17 games. And then he's playing warm weather Tampa, fairly warm weather Carolina, dome in Atlanta. That's like 11 to 12 games a year in favorable conditions where you don't have to really worry about, is he have to drive? Like it's when you're talking about Cleveland, he matches up really well with Kevin Stefanski. I don't know that he matches really well with a stadium that's on the water, where it's like you're driving a ball into wind, and you get into December and January and it gets a little horrific. And I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying, like, if you're really trying to take him and put him in the most favorable spot possible, I would want an offensive head coach. I would want it to be a dome. And I'd want it to be in a conference where guys with maybe a somewhat limited athletic profile can play, fairly well. So 9, I think, 21, Pittsburgh's, I believe Rodgers ends up there, but I do think Pittsburgh is still locked in at potentially taking their next quarterback at 21 and sitting them behind Rodgers. And then I think when you get to the tail end of it, look, the Rams don't have a second-round pick, and I'm just telling you, like, inside that building, there was some consternation, and there has been some consternation with Matt Stafford has, missed some games the last few years, and his production has not been MVP caliber because of these missed games the last few years. And it's like they've never really had a great answer, especially when they didn't have him to play. They're like, we need to start finding someone. So I think 26, the Rams, that's definitely a team that's in play. All the, Browns, Giants, Raiders, all those teams, I think when you talk the tail end of the first, the top of the second, what the possibilities might be in terms of like trade ups, I think those are all candidates. That's why I think you see a cluster of quarterbacks that really come off maybe between like 28 and 35. But yeah, I'm just telling you with Shedeur, I do think it's going to be the team that, like, it's just like Bo Nix and Denver. It's going to be the team and head coach that really has a lot of belief in him, feels like they can build the right offense around him. It feels like that he's in the most favorable, like, landing destination in terms of what teams he's going to be expected to play, what elements he's going to be expected to play in. All that stuff is going to factor in, which is when you have this conversation. That's why I think Milroe is so interesting now, because when teams are just like straight up, this dude can run like nobody can run. Like it's such a huge part of his upside that you're like, okay, well, we already have this. It's like a bird in the hand. Now we just have to develop this other really obviously very important part of his game. But teams are egotistical. They're like, all right, we can do that. Give us the guy that has this super elite trait. And by the way, is big. Like, he's got a frame. He's strong. He can throw a ball a mile. Like, we can figure it out with that guy. And I think that's why it becomes a little bit of a struggle when you look at Shedeur and you're like, yeah, all this production and stuff, but athletic profile is definitely limited. He's probably a little bit of acquired taste in terms of his confidence. It's just kind of interesting when you now are getting into the nitty gritty with these quarterbacks and you realize that it might be more of a scramble than we really believe. And remember, because of Penix in Atlanta last year, we don't know if there's not some insane chaos moment with a quarter. That has to be on the table now, which is why you hear, hey, the Arizona Cardinals, like, could they take a quarterback? And ultimately, the owner wants to move off Kyler Murray as soon as that contract becomes dumpable, which is in a year. The Miami Dolphins, you're like, what are they doing right now with Ramsey? Is this a rebuild? Like, yeah. And you have to be concerned about Tua. And again, that's a situation where you're probably 2 years out from being able to move on from the contract, but you also need a quarterback that can go in and win games for a sustained period of time if he suffers another concussion. So there are potential chaos picks too.
That's really, really fascinating stuff. Well, Charles, we're a week out from the NFL draft. Looking forward to our conversation next week. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us today, and we'll talk to you soon, my friend.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Have a good week.
Yes, sir. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. I want to react to what Charles had to say there. Some really interesting stuff on the quarterback front in the draft. And Joe, later on in the show, as we wrap up, there is a wild story that has come out that is kind of related to the Nico Iamaleava saga that I want to get to as well, that you're not going to expect. Like, of all the things you would be thinking about, this would not be one of them. I'll get into it later in the program. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning. Don't miss Nashville's best NFL draft coverage on the Game Nashville Sports Network. We'll be broadcasting live from Twin Peaks in Madison on April 24th and on Friday, April 25th, live from Boom Ba's Pizza and Watch Bar in East Nashville. Coverage begins at 6 o'clock each day, presented by Hardee's, Parman Tractor and Equipment, Twin Peaks, Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, Shanco, and Professional Home Improvements as well. It's Thursday on 102.5 The Game, Friday on Sports Talk 8:30. Appreciate Charles Robinson for being with us in the last segment. So, Joe, I'm going to leave it up to you. What do you want to do first? Do you want to react to what Charles had to say on the Shedeur Sanders front, or do you want to get to this wild story that just came across my desk here as it relates to Nico Iamaleava?
Yeah, that story is great. It's whatever you want. I mean, I think that was a fascinating Charles segment. I mean, his stuff is always fascinating, but man, there's a lot to unpack from that. We probably get into some of this tomorrow even too, like the Milroe thing and all of it.
Let's just start there. So what do you make of, like, he seems to think that there is a good chance that Shedeur is not the number 2 quarterback taken in this draft, and that he may not even be number 3. I think he talked about Milroe maybe sneaking in there. What did you make of kind of the way that these quarterbacks could fall, according to what Charles had to say there?
Yeah, well, the Shedeur thing, I mean, people have talked about that, of course, and I think he's exactly right. It's just like which team feels which way about which guy. I mean, I'm looking at ESPN right now on Get Up, and I've seen a lot of this week. Is Tyler Shuck a franchise QB? There's a lot of buzz with him right now. There has been at different times, obviously Jackson Dart. The Milroe stuff today, though, fascinating. And we did touch on that yesterday. And it's, I still think it's a risky proposition. Like, yeah, if we can just develop that one part, passing the football, I mean, that might be important. But, I mean, he has arm talent, right? I mean, it's like with Anthony Richardson. Although we didn't see, obviously he tested off the charts, the most athletic quarterback ever. We didn't see that run necessarily, that just absolutely take over a game run ability much at Florida. I think he probably has more of it than we've seen, but also he can't stay healthy. And he's a great cautionary tale for if you think this is the way you want to go, you better make sure you got a guy who can stay in one piece. But if Milroe can, it is a fascinating idea. Like, build the offense around that and put teams in such conflict, because I agree with the idea, like, of the running QBs we've seen over the last few decades. Put him up there just in terms of that skill, pure speed with power, which you would hope would translate to durability. We'll see in this league. I never assume durability with anybody in this league, but he does have the frame. You build something around him. And we know, again, he has arm talent. He makes tremendous. I think he throws a very good deep ball. It's just the inconsistency and missing so many throws last year. I thought he got worse, but that's fascinating. And it kind of does a little bit answer the question of how the heck is he going to be in Green Bay on this thing. But if he goes in the first round, first of all, great for him. And another thing about Milroe, for people who, like, if you didn't follow, because I've been around him a little bit covering Alabama games, he's awesome. Like, he must be destroying it in the interviews. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that you throw in here. Like, you're immediately going to love the kid. So that's another aspect of that. That is fascinating to me. And then, of course, Shedeur, that's been, I mean, he remains like probably as fascinating an individual story as there is in this draft. He could go top 10, top 5, second round. That's, going to be fascinating.
I mean, is Jackson Dart going to end up going like 3rd overall in this draft? Are we going to get to that point?
See, then the interesting thing about that is, remember, like, Dart essentially, although it is different and people have had different offshoots, but essentially he's coming out of this same offense we're talking about, right, with the Tennessee guys, and it doesn't seem, I have not heard a lot of, like, talk about how that's holding him back.
Right.
So that's another thing to keep in mind. But yeah, all these guys. And again, it's just me, like, doing this show is the only time I really like watch like these ESPN argument shows, and I don't listen to them. We just have them on the screen. I feel like Tyler Shuck has been everywhere this week.
Yeah. He's interesting because, Stilly talks about him a lot. Obviously, he watched a lot of him in college and thinks that he's a backup quarterback. It is going to be wild if it gets to this point next week where, Charles talked about it. You could see 5 quarterbacks go by like pick 34. If that happens in this class, with how much people have talked about this class and how down it is at quarterback, I think even though it is quarterback and people go nuts on that sometimes, I think I'd still be stunned if it works out that way by the time, the early part of the second round rolls around next week.
I agree, but he did bring up those 2 teams, very interesting. The Cardinals, if they want to get rid of the shorter, faster Cam Ward,
yes,
then obviously that's
better Call of Duty player, better Fortnite player, probably.
Maybe. And then the Dolphins. I mean, it is a great question. Like, what are they doing? So apparently they're out there, and I know Stilly, speaking of Stilly, got his pants down, as he likes to say, for this idea of trading for Jalen Ramsey. But why are the Dolphins just about to give him up for nothing?
I don't know.
That tells me you don't think you're going to be competitive this year.
Yeah,
or he's just so unbearable that you feel like you're going to somehow improve your overall bottom line by just getting rid of him, which is part of why I said, what are you talking about, trade for him? I would not do that at all right now.
Yeah, maybe they think it's addition by subtraction at that point. But then again, then there's the other stuff that I think you naturally have to wonder about now with the Dolphins, like the injury history with Tua and the head injuries with Tua have been so concerning. As Charles said, you probably can't actually move on from the contract here for another couple years just based on the sheer volume of the money that's attached to it. But do you want to go ahead and start to get in front of that if you're the Dolphins and give yourself some insurance just in case he goes down again, which nobody wants to see. But at this point, I think you have to be prepared for if you're them.
Yeah, rather than have Snoop Huntley backing him up and
right.
playing on Monday Night Football, have your young QB who you figure probably is going to have to play some games. And then when you can move on, maybe at that point you actually have an upgrade. So that's a really, really interesting team to watch. And, yeah, it is wild with a bad QB class that we might see that many, but that's what QB is in this league. I mean, QB in this league does crazy things to people. Also, the 15 to 75 thing is really interesting from Charles there. We've heard variations of that, but if you really think about that, again, middle of the first round and middle of the third round, you might have grades that are very similar. Pretty interesting.
That is pretty wild. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Got some tickets to give away to see Cake at the Ascend Amphitheater coming up this Saturday night. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025. You'll win a pair of tickets to see Cake. We'll continue to take your reaction to Charles Robinson and some of the thoughts he had on the quarterback front. Plus, there's just a wild story that I want to get Joe's thoughts on as well coming up next. We'll do all that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership with a buzz. It is always about great service. So we're going to have a lot to get to on tomorrow's program. We will continue the discussion on the Predators and the future of Andrew Brunette. We'll give you the latest on the Nico Iamaleava and quarterback front for Tennessee, and we'll obviously get more into what Charles Robinson had to say on the Shedeur Sanders quarterback front as well. So we got a lot to get into on the program tomorrow. Joe, I want to get into this story really quickly for you, which is just a wild story here. So there was this pastor from East Tennessee named Josh Sullivan who was preaching in South Africa last week. And he got abducted at gunpoint. Like, it's a crazy story. Like, it was horrifying. He got abducted at gunpoint. Like, his family was apparently there, and he was being held for ransom. Anyway, so there's like this rescue operation apparently on Tuesday in South Africa where he got rescued and he was unharmed in the process. So I want to read something from On3 Sports. It's actually from VolQuest. I think Grant Ramey put out there. And this is just a small snippet from it. Quote, Josh Sullivan, the East Tennessee pastor who was rescued from a kidnapping in South Africa during a shootout on Tuesday night, was upset to hear the news of Nico Iamaleava's departure from the Tennessee football program. Sullivan was abducted by gunmen while preaching a sermon late last week and was rescued after being held in a house 20 minutes from his Baptist church. Fellowship Baptist Church pastor Tom Hatley told WVLT that one of the first reports he heard from South Africa after the rescue was that Sullivan was, quote, upset over Nico. If that doesn't show you the power of SEC college football, Joe Rexrode, that's some wild stuff.
Say it with me now, Kaharski. SEC. God, that's freaking amazing. That is that's like, that story is like, it's like the tree poisoner dude, except it's like more uplifting. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, oh my God, here, you want to know what SEC football is? Here you go. Except Harvey Updike is like, that's like awful. This is actually kind of uplifting. So I think is now the new good example of SEC football story.
It's like, hey, man, are you okay? I know you just went through this horrifying experience. And like, apparently this was a pretty intense rescue where like, I think the gunman may be dead. Like what they just went through with the police, and his concern after it was like, man, I think I'm okay, but I just don't know who's going to play quarterback for Tennessee.
What's up with Nico?
High and dry. What's going on?
Absolutely amazing, man.
I saw that like Andy Staples tweeted about it, and he like tagged Ari Wasserman in the tweet. And he's like, hey, man, if you're ever wondering like what our audience is, it's this guy. This is our guy right here.
Exactly. Hey, on the college football front, to get to real quick, they have passed some rules this morning. So I don't think this is enough, but they have passed a timeout penalty now on the fake injury thing. So I think that's a good step, and I'm not going to get into all but essentially now, if it's clear that you're faking an injury, you can be docked to timeout. If you don't have one, then it could be a delay game penalty. So I think that's step in the right direction. I still like the idea of if a particular player is doing that player misses the rest of the series. I think that's,
yeah,
I like that better. I know that's a little harder to deal with, but at least there's something. You had to do something about the fake injury thing.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they like enforce that moving forward, because I'm with you. Like I'd kind of like to see you're out the rest of the series there, and
it's after the ball is spotted. So in other words, teams going fast. That's when it always happens, right? It's like,
just drops down,
right? Yeah. So I mean, I think it should clean it up some.
Joe, congratulations on getting your real ID. I know it was a big point of emphasis today on the show. People were very concerned. I'm glad you got it.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you to the people at the Driver Services Center for dealing with me. And now please get me my real ID in time. Please.
That's gonna do it for us today here on the program. We'll see if I actually, can wake up and show up to work tomorrow. Chasing Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.